Hey everybody, I'm Samurai Sam, and today we are starting a new system in this series that probably only I am watching and like two other people. Of every game in my collection, I'm showing off, like just showing off every single game and saying a little thing about it. And today we're on Sega Saturn, in my opinion, probably the most underrated system of all time. It actually did really well in Japan, which a lot of people in the West don't really know. It was total flop in America and in Europe, and really was a big part of Sega's downfall. But actually, quite a good system with a lot of good games. So let's start off here. This is Astal. I don't know exactly how to pronounce it. This is a 2D platformer, and I haven't played it a lot. It's a 2D. It's 2D in graphics and gameplay. It's a sprite based. It has voice acting that's really bad. It seemed really hard to me when I tried it. Like you don't have a lot of lives to deal with, and only I don't remember one continue if any. So it's a tough game. A lot of people really like it though, so I'll give it another shot at some point. Here we have Decathlete. This is an Olympics game, and yeah, it's kind of. I don't have that much to say about it because I haven't played it a lot, but it seems to be what you would expect from an Olympics game, like button mashy events, like running and stuff that involve like hitting the buttons really fast and all that. This game, I actually have this game in both long box and small box, so I guess I'll just show the small box and I'll talk about the game later when I get to the big box. Nights into Dreams. This is a small box version. This came with my Saturn when I first got it in 2000. Actually, the first Saturn I got, I should say. I've gone through a few Saturns. There's another game, one of my original Saturn games, Panzer Dragoon. This was a launch title for the Saturn. At least in America it was. I don't know about Japan, but this is a isometric, rail shoot. Wait, no, it's not isometric. What am I talking about? This is a rail shooter, kind of arcade style, even though there wasn't an arcade version, and you control this dragon, and you shoot things. You have a little crosshair, and you shoot things. And gameplay is actually pretty simple, but very difficult as well, challenging. And graphics and music are really beautiful. The graphics were beautiful for the time. The music is really beautiful and timeless. The sequels to this game improve the formula, but it's an okay game. It feels a little bit too simplistic in terms of gameplay, in my opinion, but it's pretty good. I haven't never been able to beat it though. Here's Shinobi Legions, also known as Shinobi X, I believe, in PAL regions, and in Japan it's called Shin Shinobi Den, I think. It's part of Sega's long-running Shinobi series, obviously, and I like this. Well, this game actually has a different soundtrack in Europe than it does in the America and Japan, I believe. But I do actually like the U.S. soundtrack quite a bit. I haven't really compared them. I play this game some, but not all. Apparently, some of the levels are pretty darn cheap later on, and so it's not like the best 2D platformer action game in the world. But it's pretty good. It has digitized actors, I think, and I think that's part of the graphics, not just the cutscenes. And I think it looks all right actually for a Saturn game. It's kind of fun to play, but apparently some of the level design isn't that great. I haven't played it a ton, so I can't give a full review myself. Here is Ultimate Mortal Kombat 3. This is one reason why I wanted a Saturn in the first place way back in the day, because for a long time this was definitely the best home port of Ultimate Mortal Kombat 3. It's a very good arcade version. The main problem, there's two main problems that come to mind, is that one, loading times are pretty darn long, which you kind of expect, and two, the background music is shuffled around, so the background music for one stage actually plays in a different stage than it does in the other versions of the game, which is kind of weird, but it's not the end of the world. It is, on the whole, a very good port of the arcade version of Ultimate Mortal Kombat 3, and it's obviously got some cheat codes and options and stuff that aren't in the arcade version, so really happy with that. I probably should get that long box. I've had it disc only for literally the entire time I've had it, for 15 years. Virtua Fighter, this was a launch title for the Sega Saturn everywhere. Virtua Fighter is very famous. It was, if not the first, it was absolutely one of the first 3D fighters. I think it was definitely the first. I hate it when people say that, and then I go say it myself. I'm quite sure that it was the first critically acclaimed 3D fighter, if not the first one, period. But it's a little weird to go back to today. The physics are weird and stuff. It's obviously not as refined as more modern fighting games. And you jump and you're on the moon. It's weird. Virtua Fighter, this Saturn port, I think it was kind of rushed, and this is not an arcade perfect port. There's problems with it, but they did release a version later called Virtua Fighter Remix for the Saturn that was better. And I don't know what's exactly the best home port of Virtua Fighter. Actually, I already showed you Virtua Fighter a little bit in the episode with 32X games, so that already happened. I probably already talked about it a little bit. I think the 32X version is considered better than the Saturn version, although I don't know about Remix. Here is Albert Odyssey, Legend of Eldion. One of Working Designs translated localized RPG. Working Designs was a really cool company. They were really special. They brought over a lot of games that wouldn't have come out here otherwise, and had very humorous and loose localizations, for better or worse. Our Odyssey is an RPG. It seems pretty standard as far as RPGs go. I really like the 2D graphics and the music. I tried getting into this one, though, and the game seemed a little bit difficult to get into. I forget exactly why. It was slow-paced, I think. And, yeah, I probably should try and give it another shot. I know it's not, like, one of the best RPGs ever or anything. It's fairly standard in terms of gameplay, but, you know, I have a thing for working designs. I do like the graphics and music, as I said, so I'll try it again at some point. Baku Baku. This is a puzzle game. Versus puzzle game. Kind of like, what's the best comparison with Baku Baku? I guess, like, Puzzle Fighter is somewhat of a close comparison, but not that close. Basically, you have these colored blocks, and there are animal blocks that you get once in a while, and if an animal block touches the colored blocks, it will eat all of those colored blocks of that color. So I guess it's kind of like the Puyo Puyo Street Fighter Puzzle Fighter kind of game, only it's a little like simpler and easier to get into, and I like that, and I like the music and stuff, like the aesthetics of the game and stuff, and the charm. Yeah, I think Baku Baku is actually really good. I would recommend it if you like puzzle games and you have a Saturn. It's not too expensive either, I don't think. Here is Blast Chamber. There's also a PlayStation version of this. This is a game where you are in a chamber, as you can see in the screenshot, hopefully. And I have played this game a little bit with friends, and I'm trying to remember exactly. Like you have to like get the things, the glowing things in the chamber, and you can like flip the chamber around. You can like rotate it by stepping on these things, and you want to get to the stuff before your enemies do. This is a multiplayer emphasized game. It does have single player, I believe. But you definitely want to have friends to play this. And it seems like a pretty cool game. And I'll probably spend more time with it. I'll probably spend some time on single player and see how I like it even more. Here's Bottom of the Ninth. This is a baseball game from Konami, I believe. Well, I mean, Konami published it. I don't know if they developed it. I imagine they did develop it. But I think I remember this being in arcades, or if not, like a game in this series, because I definitely remember a Bottom of the Ninth game in arcades. And I really like baseball. I don't know that much about this game, though. I haven't had it terribly long, I don't think, and I only probably played it once or twice, so yeah, I can't say too much about Bottom of the Ninth. I think it's considered a good game. Here is Burning Rangers. This is one of the very last Saturn games that came out in America, when the system was literally all but dead. And this game feels a little bit, well, I don't know. It kind of feels a little bit rushed to me, although maybe it's not. Maybe it just feels that way, because it is pretty short. There's only like a few levels, but there is replay value, because there's a lot of like optional characters you can rescue in the levels. So if you really like this game, you can play the levels over and over, and there's also 2 playable characters as well. That also makes a difference. So like it's a game, I guess, that's meant to be replayed a lot, but it does come off feeling a little bit too short. Basically, it's a 3D game, 3D like action game, and there's fire everywhere, and like you're trying to save people from this exploding building, and there's a navigation voice thing that tells you like where to go and stuff, which is kind of neat. I mean, it's more than that. It's like actually a character talking to you, so it's like it's done well in my opinion. Like fire will like explode, and there's like a sound that warns you, so you have to like avoid it, like hit the dodge button when that happens. And yeah, I think it's pretty good. I probably should try and play it at some point. But anyway, this game is kind of. This game has like some music associated with it that Sega released at the time, like songs about the Burning Rangers that are kind of cheesy and amusing, and so I like that a lot. And like the game kind of feels like it's in love with itself. Like its name is like everywhere. There's like 4 different spots on the cover with the name, or is it 3? I don't know. But like yeah, with that and like the music that goes with it, like it feels like they're just going for like this cheesy, interesting. IP that they wound up not doing anything with after that. So, yeah, Burning Rangers. Interesting game. Busted Move 2 Arcade Edition. This is one of the weirdest box arts ever that does not do anything to describe what the game is actually like. So, I don't think I've talked about Busted Move yet. Busted Move is a game where, like, you are this little dinosaur dude or whatever other character you're playing as, and you move this arrow and shoot these balls. They look like marbles. And, they will stick to the balls or marbles that are on the top of the screen, as you can see in the screenshot, and the 3 of the same color will, if there's 3 of the same color touching each other, they get destroyed, and your goal typically is to get rid of all of them, or in multiplayer, it's to make your opponent fail. And very fun, very addictive, and Yeah, I mean, fairly straightforward. I believe this is like the best version of Bust a Move 2 compared to the PS1 and the 64 versions. I think it has more content and stuff. And yeah, I really like this game. Definitely recommend it if you have a Saturn. It's not very expensive either, so pick it up. Command and Conquer. This was a very famous, popular PC game. I think the console versions were not nearly as popular, probably in part because the mouse and keyboard are what you really want for this. I haven't played this very much. I think it's RTS. Yeah, I can't say too much. I mean, it's a really famous game, and I think the Saturn version is like all right for a console version, but you probably would rather play that on PC. Darius Gaiden. This is a shoot 'em up from Taito. It's part of course, the Darius series. This is a little different from other Darius games because it's not super widescreen. It's like regular 4x3 from that era, but it does have like the branching levels that you like choose as you go, which is pretty cool. And there's a lot I like about Darius Gaiden. It's fast-paced. It's got a really weird soundtrack. I kind of like it, but it is very, very odd. I'm not even going to try to describe it. Just go look it up if you want to see what I mean. But Darius Gaiden, I feel like could be really, really great, but it's got a couple really crippling flaws. One, the power-up system. Your basic gun, even like the second level gun, really, really suck in like the mid to late levels. And if you die a couple times and get reduced down to them, you're just done. Like you have no chance. It's just your weak guns are really, really worthless, and it's not as easy to get power ups as it is in stuff like Gradius. Even Gradius has that problem of your basic shot sucks too much. This is even worse. But a bigger problem is a lot of like the bosses I felt in Darius Gaiden were not pattern based enough. Like a lot of the bullet patterns are like really like random. It feels like, and very, very, very difficult to dodge. And I didn't like that very much. So Darius Gaiden, kind of a mixed bag. I like a lot of things about it, but a lot of things I don't like. Dark Legend is a very, very obscure 2D fighting game, although it did get released on the PlayStation Network under a different name. I don't remember the name offhand. It's like Japanese, Chinese, or something. But I don't have too much to say about it. I have played it. I've beaten arcade mode, and yeah, it's fun. Like if you like 2D fighters, you like this game. I don't think there's anything too drastically different. It's obviously got like an ancient China vibe going for it. And yeah, if you like 2D fighters, pick it up. Here is Dark Saviors from the same people who made like Landstalker, which I've talked about before. And this is an interesting game, isometric like action platformer game with weird, not very good battles that like take place on a separate screen. So it's not really an RPG though. And it's got kind of an interesting story about this monster named Bilano, if I remember right. And there's like 3 different or 4 different like paralogs you can do, like variations of the story. Like, I don't know. This game seems kind of interesting to me, but also seems unpolished. And at some point, I beat like the first paralog, but I still really need to beat the other 3 to really review it properly. And maybe I'll do that someday. I don't know. Daytona! So basically, Daytona USA, racing game. If you were in the arcades in the 90s, you probably played this at some point. Very popular arcade game. Graphics dumbed down a bit for Sega Saturn. But, I mean, it's pretty fun. It's not the same as playing in the arcade, honestly. Even with the wheel controller, it's not the same as playing in an arcade, in my opinion. It's alright. Like, I'm glad to have it just because it's Daytona and, like, it's well-known, popular. But, like, it's not really one that I really play on the Saturn all that much. Die Hard Arcade, based on the movie, of course, with Bruce Willis. And it's funny, they can't say the full phrase that starts with Yippee-Ki-Yay because, the bad word that follows it. So it's funny to see that advertised on the box when he never actually says that by itself in the movie. But it's a 3D action game, obviously arcade oriented. And I played a little bit. I definitely do want to play it some more, though, with friends and such, and it seems like it's pretty well made. Exclusive to Sega Saturn as well, so that's pretty cool. If you like Die Hard and 3D or arcade beat-em-ups, that's probably a game for you. Dragon Force, another Working Designs published game. This is a strategy game. I've tried getting into this a couple times, and I've really not been able to. Like, it's basically you choose commanders, and you choose like a type of unit, and like you move them around the map, and the battles themselves, I don't find that exciting a lot because you don't really have that much control over them, I guess. Yeah, a lot of people really, really like this game, though. Apparently, it's really well made for the people who do like it. Jury's still out as to whether I can be one of those people. I've tried a couple times, and I haven't been able to really feel what those people do. But, maybe I will someday. We'll see. Earthworm Jim 2. I don't think Earthworm Jim 2 is really that great. I think I talked about it earlier on Super Nintendo. It's got a lot of weird different levels, and the puppy bouncing levels are really annoying and difficult, in my opinion. I wish they would have focused a little bit more on like the 2D action side-scrolling action levels. But I mean, it's a good game. Yeah, I mean, it's barely what I'd consider a good game. Like, I really like the music. It's like a lot of it is like derivative folk music, but well remixed. This version is probably the best version of the game, by the way. PlayStation version is only in Europe, though. That might be just as good. I don't know. But Earthworm Jim 2, like, I mean, I want to love it, but I can't really love it. It's all right. Fighters Mega Mix. This takes characters from Virtua Fighter and Fighting Vipers, which I don't have Fighting Vipers, unfortunately. And this is probably considered, well, if not the best, one of like the 2 best 3D fighters on the Saturn. I tried playing a little bit, and it seems outdated to me, but yeah, it's got some really amusing playable characters and unlockable characters, so it has that going for it at least. Galactic Attack, also known as Layer Section in Japan, it's a shoot 'em up. It's one of those shoot 'em ups where like there's multiple planes, so meaning PLAINS. So basically, there's enemies that are lower than other enemies that you can shoot with a different weapon. And yeah, it's pretty cool. It's not terribly unique as far as shooters go, but it's pretty solid. Galaxy Fight. This is a 2D fighter from, is this SNK? What company is this? Oh, Sunsoft. Yeah, it's a Sunsoft fighter. 2D fighter. Some interesting characters in this one. Main thing that sets this one apart from most other 2D fighters, though, is that there's no walls on either side of the field, so you can just back up indefinitely. So if you're a fighter that likes to run away, that is one that for you to try, you will enjoy that game. Grid Runner is a game. It's almost like a game of tag. Like one character's kind of it, and when you're it, you want to grab like the different flags and stuff. And if you're not it, then you want to catch the character who's it. And pretty fun 2-player game. And I've played some of the single player. It's all right. It's not like anything that's going to set the world on fire, but pretty solid game, cheap game to pick up. It's also on the PlayStation, by the way. Guardian Heroes. This game is very highly praised. It's a beat 'em up with a lot of RPG elements, even though like it's kind of meant to be played in one sitting, I think. But like has a lot of replay value because different characters and such. This game is also well known for its multiplayer battle royale for up to 6 characters, which is pretty cool. I've never actually been able to play that though. I've had trouble getting into single player Guardian Heroes though. Like when I tried it, it seemed like kind of unfair and I don't know, like not that intuitive to me, and like how to actually play it properly. But a lot of people really love it, so maybe they're right. I think it's all right, but it's not one of my favorites. Herc's Adventures is a adventure game with 2D graphics, kind of like Diablo-ish, I think. Very cartoony and good sense of humor. I really liked it at first, but after I progressed a while, I started getting sick of it. Like it becomes like I forget exactly what my problem was. Like it becomes unclear where to go or something, and like I don't know. There's not like a really that easy of a way to get around the world or something like that. But I mean, it's an interesting game. I like the style of it, but I'm not sure if it's the best game in the world. Magic Knight Rare. This is the last game to come out for the Sega Saturn outside Japan. Working Designs published it, and it took them forever because of various issues. And it's kind of a Zelda-ish, more action, less puzzle, like most Zelda-ish games are. And you have 3 playable characters that have their own abilities, and Fu is really overpowered. Yeah, I've never really gotten into the anime, but this is actually quite a good game. It's not like the best game in the world, but it does have that Working Designs flair to it. And I recommend it, but it's really expensive now. So, yeah, if you have the means to play it, then have fun with it. I definitely recommend it if you have the means. Mega Man 8. This is the best version of Mega Man 8 to this day because it has some exclusive content. And it's definitely better than the PS1 version. I actually really like Mega Man 8. It's got really voice acting that's so bad it's good, in my opinion. And I think the gameplay is actually pretty solid. Some people really don't like it, but I think it's well made. It's not like overly cheap like some Mega Man games sometimes feel. It's actually one of my favorites in the core series, if I'm going to be perfectly honest. Mega Man X4, probably the best Mega Man X game on the whole. Maybe. Definitely one of the best ones. And this one also has really bad voice acting to the point where it's amusing. But yeah, one thing that's cool is that you can play as Mega Man X or you can play as Zero, who plays very differently. And it's really well made. A lot of fun. Challenging, but not like overly cheap. Except the final boss is really annoying. I don't like the final boss. It's the biggest problem with the game, but highly recommend it if you like Mega Man at all. Mortal Kombat 2. I was really excited to get this back in the day. Unfortunately, this version is not nearly as good of a port as it should have been. It's not arcade perfect. It does have the best graphics from the time, but like it's got like I think there's generally no announcer, mostly no announcer. The fatalities have no sound, which is really weird, and the music is much worse than the arcade version. not the best version of MK2. I wouldn't recommend it. Mortal Kombat Trilogy. This is very close to the PS1 version. I think they fixed some of the glitches that were in the original PS1 release, which also, if you have PS1 Greatest Hits, that also fixed the glitches. Mortal Kombat Trilogy has characters, all the characters from the first 3 games, plus Ultimate MK3 as well. And this is a pretty good version of it. There's some minor differences in / downgrades from the PS1 version, but they're so minor you probably won't ever notice them. That being said, the PS version is a lot more common and cheap, so I would recommend that version unless you really want to play with a Saturn pad and your collector and all that. Mr. Bones, this game is really bizarre, has a really interesting sense of humor. Gameplay, I'm iffy on. I've played it some, and at one point it got really frustrating. It's like a platformer most of the time, but I think it might have some levels that mix it up. Yeah, I think it does. Yeah, go and look up the cutscenes of this game on YouTube. They're something else. That's all I'm going to say about that. Mystaria, this is one of the first games I ever bought for the Saturn. It's also one of the ugliest games I have ever seen, period. The graphics suck. The font is awful and kind of hard to read. It's just one of the aesthetically displeasing games ever made, in my opinion. Gameplay is kind of like Fire Emblem, and I tried getting into it. It's not like just a rip-off of Fire Emblem, though. There's like a skill system that's kind of unique. And it seems like it might be a good game. I played some of it, and after a while it seemed a little bit blandish. But, I didn't make it terribly far, so maybe someday I'll play through the rest of it. But goodness, that game is so ugly. NBA Jam Tournament Edition. I mean, NBA Jam is one of the most popular arcade games of all time. You probably know that. Tournament Edition adds, injuries to the mix, so, your characters can get fatigued and hurt in the middle of the game. Apparently, the home console versions of this have some kind of a glitch or something that make it not that desirable. But I don't really... I'm not saying I don't believe it. It's probably true. I mean, it's still a fun version. But, yeah, the arcade version is probably a lot better. NBA Live 98. This is, I think, considered a bad version of it. But the reason why I have it is because it's up to 8 players multi-tap, which you can't do on any other system. Someday I want to get a bunch of people together for a basketball game and try that out. Just because it sounds like fun chaos. NFL Quarterback Club 96. Saturn version of a Super Nintendo game I played a long time ago, a lot, as a kid. I showed it to you on a previous episode. This version has completely different graphics and even, different gameplay, kind of, than the Super Nintendo one and the Genesis one. It feels like the engine is different. The playbook is all the same and stuff, and the basic mechanics are the same, but it's actually different. And, yeah, I think it's pretty good. And the presentation's pretty good. Probably not really worth going back to today, but, if you want a football game on your Saturn, you could do a lot worse. Nights into Dreams is one of the most famous Saturn games, one of the most successful Saturn games. Basically, you are either a boy or a girl, and I don't remember exactly how it works. If you're transforming into the character knights here, or if you're just summoning them. I don't know if it's a him or a her. But basically, when you're knights, you fly around and you collect, you go through hoops and you collect stars and stuff. And the idea of this game is it's a score attack game. Basically, you're trying to get everything done, collect as many things in as little time as possible, and make it to the end of the stage and beat the boss, before time runs out or something, and get a big bunch of bonus points. It's definitely a game that you want to play if you're into high scores and playing the same levels over and over again to try and perfect your scores. If you are that kind of person, you will have a lot of fun with Knights. If you're just playing games just to beat them, you're probably not going to see what's so special about it. But I do like Knights. I had trouble getting into it, but once I did get into it, I did enjoy it. Panzer Dragoon 2 is why. I think this is my favorite Panzer Dragoon game. I feel like it's the best, most well-designed. Really upgraded over the first one. They added a couple features to it, No, I don't think you can do that. But Berserk mode is something that they added. They added a super attack and stuff, and your dragon, you can grow your dragon in different ways, and there's different paths you can go on. It just feels like a much more fleshed out version of the first game, and I liked it a lot. And I will play it some more and see the other paths and stuff. Yeah, definitely recommend it if you have a Saturn. It hasn't been properly ported, I don't think, to any system. Speaking of which, Panzer Dragoon Saga, another one of the most famous Saturn games. It's an RPG, kind of mixed with Panzer Dragoon gameplay. Very famous game, and released kind of at the end of the Saturn's life cycle. Has kind of definitely has a very strong following. A lot of people claim this is a masterpiece. I don't think it's as great as those people say. It is very unique. There's definitely no game even close like this. I didn't think the story was really that great. Like, I've beaten the game twice, and I struggle to remember some of the details of the story. That's not a really good sign. It's not, like, bad or anything, but, I wish there was a better story. I felt like the game was a little too short, and it's definitely too easy as well. Like, this just doesn't feel very challenging, but it is a good game, and I'm happy to have been able to play it, which a lot of people haven't. Pandemonium, this is a platformer. I think this is like a 2.5D platformer. I haven't played it a lot. I tried playing it and it seemed alright, but not like anything that special. There's also a PlayStation version. I might sell this one, I'm not sure. We got Rayman here as well, the first Rayman game ever made. It's not just a PlayStation game, believe it or not. Rayman is a really beautiful game, really well done 2D graphics and gorgeous music, but the gameplay is a little bit iffy. Like, it has some very big, cheap difficulty moments that I really don't appreciate. So, yeah, Rayman, I want to love it, but it's hard for me too. Romance of the Three Kingdoms 4, Wall of Fire. It's one of those, like, I don't have the back art, by the way. It's one of those strategy RPG. Well, it's not really an RPG. It's like strategy numbers game where you have like a big army and you have to micromanage everything and stuff. There's a ton of these games out there, and I got this in a lot with a bunch of other Saturn games. So I'm not sure if I'll ever actually play it. I'll probably sell this one, honestly. But yeah, maybe it's good for people who are like, ooh, this is a good one. Saturn Bomberman, probably the best Bomberman game of all time. And one of the coolest things about it is multi-tap up to 10 players. I did actually get to do that once, and it was mad fun. Just really, really solid Bomberman game. Multiplayer is really the reason why you play Bomberman. It does have a single player. I've played it a little bit, but not too much, so I can't fully comment on that. But yeah, if this is the party Bomberman game, if you want one of those. So yeah, if you have a Saturn, if you're interested in Saturn, pick that up. You can get the Japanese version for a lot cheaper, by the way. Sega Rally Championship driving game. It's got some pretty tight controls, which I do appreciate. Big problem with this game is just there's not a lot of content. Like, there's a few, 4 tracks or something, and unless you really want to beat your high scores, like, there's not really that much reason to go back unless you're just really hooked on it, which some people are. A lot of people really, really praise this game up. It's actually one of the, by the way, I think this is like one of the 2 or 3 best-selling Saturn games of all time, for whatever that's worth. Sega Ages. This is a compilation of 3 games: Afterburner 2, Outrun, and Space Harrier. The titles are weirdly arranged here. This is localized by Working Designs, who normally did RPGs. But these are very good arcade ports that actually add like 60 frame per second mode, which was not the original arcades. These are actually apparently better than the arcades versions. So yeah, I mean, if you like old school Sega arcade, definitely this is a game to look for if you have a Saturn. Highly recommended. Shining the Holy Ark. This is a really cool RPG that is sadly way too obscure. Not nearly enough people have played this one. This is a sequel to Shining in the Darkness, sort of, like a spiritual successor, really. And it's by Camelot, the team that would become Camelot. And it's really, really well done. Like, first-person dungeon crawling, and I really like the music in this one. Graphics are pretty nice for the time as well. And fun dungeon crawler with puzzles and such. And battle system is simple, but entertaining. Yeah, it's just a shame that just hardly anybody has been able to play it because it's been on the Saturn. But yeah, I definitely recommend it. Shining Force 3. This game was the reason why I bought a Saturn. I played it at a friend's house when I was a kid, and I thought it looked really cool. And then I got it later, and I wasn't disappointed. I did replay it last year. It wasn't quite as great as I remembered it, but still very good. And it should be noted, this is the first game of a trilogy. You really need to play the second 2 to get the most out of it. And unfortunately, those didn't come out in America, but they are fan translated. We'll get to them in a future episode. Really great graphics and music for the time. Well, the graphics could have been better for Shining Force 3 Part 1, but cool story and such, and interesting well-designed characters, not the best written characters, I should say. Solar Eclipse. This is a kind of Star Foxy sort of game, but like with real actors. And it seems alright. Not anything terrible, but not really that special either. It came with my Saturn, one of my first games, so that's part of why I have it. Sonic Jam. This is a compilation that has the first 3 Sonic games, plus, Sonic and Knuckles. There's some emulation well, no, actually, it's not emulation. I think they formally ported them onto Saturn hardware. These aren't as good as the original Genesis versions generally, but this version does have some cool features to it that kind of make it worth it, in my opinion. And this is the first game that actually added the spin dash to Sonic 1, so that's a cool thing. Street Fighter Alpha Warrior's Dreams. What can I say about it? I mean, it's a good Street Fighter game. It's probably not the best one. Maybe, unless you really want to try all the Street Fighter games, it's probably not really worth going back to this one, but it's alright. Don't have too much to say about it. There's some characters that made their Street Fighter debuts in there, and that's pretty cool. Street Fighter Collection. This has Super Street Fighter 2 Turbo. I think it has Super Street Fighter 2 Turbo, and Street Fighter Alpha 2 Gold, which is a pretty darn good combination, if you ask me. Yeah, all good games. The Saturn controller is great for Street Fighter. Unfortunately, this version is a little expensive, although there is the Japanese version as well. But yeah, good game. Street Fighter Collection. Happy to have it. Tempest 2000 right here. This game has really, really cool, like, techno-y, if that's the right genre, like, kind of music to it, and interesting graphics, but the graphics kind of get in the way of the gameplay, because, like, there's a lot of, like, explosions and stuff that make it hard to see enemies and such, and also, the gameplay kind of falls flat, in my opinion. Like, you have to get a power-up in order to jump, but if you don't get that power-up, you are just screwed. Like, you're just not gonna... If you miss that power-up, you are just done, and I think it's just a little too unforgiving, in my opinion. Tetris Plus. This is a Tetris game. I think I talked about this on Game Boy already. But there's a dude, like, walking around in the Tetris field, and you want to, like, clear blocks so he can escape or something like that. Seems like a cute little spin on the Tetris formula, and I like it. Three Dirty Dwarves. This is a beat-em-up with for up to 3 players multi-tap. And it's got kind of a, like... I think these characters are supposed to be, like... They're into, like, D&D. It's supposed to be, like, kind of nerdy. And then, like... Yeah, it's kind of a weird... kind of 90s, almost like Beavis and Butthead, I want to say. Not quite that crude, but like kind of that, it kind of reminds me of that. But yeah, it seems like a pretty solid game. I played it some with friends and I enjoyed it. I would definitely recommend this one if you like beat-em-ups. How many times can I say definitely in one video? I don't know. You count. Virtua Cop. Not too much to say about Virtua Cop. It's a gun game, light gun game, and from the arcades, and it's too short. There's only like 3 levels. But it's fun. I do like Virtua Cop, and it's up to 2 players, which is cool. Fun to play with friends. And then there's Virtua Cop 2, which is a lot better than the first one, apparently, but I've barely played this one, sadly. But I definitely want to, because I do like gun games. I wish I could say more about it. I just know that like it's better than the first one. I don't know how much more content there is, but yeah, if you like gun games, that's one to pick up. It's also on some other systems, too, like Dreamcast in Japan and PlayStation 2 in Japan, though. Virtua Fighter 2, I think this was the #1 best-selling Saturn game of all time, and I think it was in America. But this is a sequel to, obviously, the Virtua Fighter, 3D Fighter. This is considered very good for the time. It was very highly praised when it came out. But I've had trouble getting into some of the old 3D Fighters. That doesn't mean I can't, though. I will, at some point, try this and try, like, really seriously learn it. But yeah, if you like 3D Fighters, that is probably one to try out because it's considered really good. And then finally we have Worms, which is the first in, obviously, the Worm series by Team 17, mostly known for being on PC. And strategy-based, like you have 2 teams of worms on this field at one time, and you try to destroy one another, either by knocking them off the stage or draining their health to 0, and you have all kinds of different weapons, and it's got a good sense of humor and stuff. The sequels were almost certainly better than this, but, yeah, I don't know. I could probably do with selling this game just because the sequels are better, and kind of why go back to this one, but hey, I have it, so it's probably a solid game on its own anyway, though. So that's the first part of the Sega Saturn. Next episode, stay tuned, is going to be Sega Saturn imports, of which there are quite a few. Have a great rest of your day. Thank you for watching.